right. So I'm talking with a hero of mine, a man that influenced me to do what I'm doing now, a man that has made me laugh more than any other human being ever. And on Friday, November 21st, he'll be performing stand-up comedy at the Paramount in Huntington. Talking with Mr. Jim Norton. Jimmy, how's it going, buddy?
Thank you. That was very nice. When people say I inspired them to do what I'm doing now, they're usually ready to kick a ladder out with a noose around their neck. Thank you, though.
This is very surreal getting to talk with you. I've had these imaginary conversations with you for 20 years, listening to you on the radio, obviously the Opie and Anthony days, and now I get to share the airwaves with you. Is there a moment in your life where you couldn't imagine you're in this situation, whether it's being on Letterman or the Tonight Show? Is there something that really stands out?
Probably the first time I talked to Gene Simmons when he came in, but that was on the old O&A in the afternoon. Interviewing Ozzy for the first time. I've had a lot of weird moments like that. When De Niro was spanking me for, I'm like, this is just not, it's bizarre. Like, it's so bizarre to have this. I'd worked with him on a film, which was not, let's be honest, not critically acclaimed, called The Comedian. I was just kind of on the outside. I got to go to a meeting with the director, Taylor Hackford, and De Niro in his building. It was just the three of us in the room talking about comedy. And that was I was so nervous, it was so crazy that I wasn't nervous. Like, do you know what I mean? It was almost like, it was so overwhelming that I came back to normal. It kind of came full circle. So I've had moments like that where I'm just doing something. When I was having sex with Brie Olson, I was like, I can't believe that I'm here. I would say that's probably the number one.
Now, we both have an obsession of meeting celebrities, famously you running out of the studio to take pictures with celebrities.
Yeah.
I'm actually meeting Mr. S. He's a professional wrestler, Billy Gunn. You guys have talked about him on the Opie and Anthony show back in the day, but I'm paying money to meet him. You have had the honor of, just getting to meet and talk with so many celebrities. Is there something that really caused this obsession of taking pictures with celebrities? Is there something that stood out from maybe your childhood? It's like, I want to meet these people. I want to document it. I want to, frame it and put it on a wall.
No, I don't know. Because when I first started, I met Kinnison and I got him to sign a napkin. I met Richard Pryor once. I got him to sign my bit. So I didn't do photos. I wish I had when I met those guys, but I didn't do them in the beginning. And I'm trying to think of who a photo was. It was probably around the Opie and Anthony time where I was in the room with somebody and I'm like, why not just of course oh, I remember it was. First time I met Ozzy, I was with Jim Florentine. It was 1997, MTV, and we were going up and I was just gonna get Ozzy to sign something. And Jim goes, take the picture. And he had his camera ready. So I just stood there and we took the picture. And then I think that's what kind of kicked me in. Ozzy at MTV, 1997.
You famously have one of the most iconic scenes in one of the most famous movies of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Furry Vengeance.
Yes.
What was I'm talking about Spider-Man, of course. How did you get the role in that? Was that an audition process, or was Sam Raimi a fan of your comedy?
No, I went and auditioned. My manager at the time, Maureen, got me an audition, but they just wanted you to throw out lines. Like, you're playing a man on the street, just throw out lines about Spider-Man. And I threw out a bunch of negative stuff, like it wasn't pro Spider-Man. And then I got the call, hey, you got the job. I never met Sam Raimi. It was second unit done in Queens. So it was just, man on the street. And again, I was just improvising a lot of lines. And I did a lot of lines about, what about his right hand and what the webbing could have been. And they're like, dude, this is a kid's movie. We got my I had to clean it up. I was being a real pig. But I wish I would have met Sam Raimi, but I didn't get to.
Now, what would you grade? See how I did that diversion of saying the Furry Vengeance thing, and then was that a terrible joke? Or what would you say?
No.
Right. Okay.
No, it was a fair way to say Furry Vengeance is not a highlight.
Yeah.
Not wrong. The only fun part about that was I worked with, Brooke Shields was very nice and Brendan Fraser was great. And hanging with Patrice for that 2 weeks was a lot of fun because he was difficult, let's just say, on the set.
Yeah. Yeah. And Brooke Shields is, she seemed awesome. I know she came on the show, years later and talked about that experience. And speaking of Patrice O'Neill, one of the greats of all time, and I'm sure you've gotten this question a million times, but if he was around today and you were able to share the airwaves with him, for one show, is there a subject matter that you would want to hear his opinion on, whether it's movies or politics?
I'd be curious as to how he felt about Trump getting elected. That was something I'm like, I would love to have heard his take on that. It probably wouldn't have been a predictable take. He probably would have had good and bad things to say about it. But I would have been very curious to hear his take on Trump's presidency, the first one.
So I actually saw your buddy Chip Chipperson a few years ago at the Paramount.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that guy's great. Now you're going to be performing there on the 21st. How do you deal with stage fright when you're going up to do a stand-up comedy routine? You've been sober famously for a number of years now. Is there something that you do to calm down the nerves, or do you think the nervous energy helps with
First of
the
all,
performance?
Chip sold it faster than I am. It's
Yeah.
humiliating. No, you just kind of learn what it is. Like I know I'm a little nervous. Just slow down if you feel nervous. Don't speed up because then you start tripping on your words. Just go out there and just feel it. Like if it's scary, feel scared. Like I know what it is. Like after all these years, I know it's just normal nerves. Some nights I have it, some nights I don't. You know, you never want to be so nervous you're paralyzed, but you don't want to be so comfortable that you feel nothing either. So I think a little bit of a balance of that is very healthy.
The big story in comedy this year was the Riyadh Comedy Festival.
Yeah.
And what were your thoughts about the show? Do you think the controversy surrounding it is warranted? I mean, a lot of your friends obviously performing there. What was your takeaway from that whole, situation?
If they offered me $400,000, I would have gone there on September 12th. I mean, come on. I could care less. I'll never tell a comic where to work, where not to work. Major sports organizations go there.
WWE's there. They're doing
Sure.
WrestleMania there.
I don't like Saudi Arabia. I certainly don't think the entire government was responsible for 9/11, just certain elements. But either way, would I have gone? 100%. I think sometimes if comedians try too hard to be pious or too hard to be political, you do set yourself up for hypocrisy calls just because eventually all of us are going to fall short. Like we're all a little full of shit, comics, and every person too. We're all a little inconsistent. We all show hypocrisy. So if you're vocal enough, you'll eventually fall into that. You can't, it's just the nature of the beast. But I don't care who goes over there. I didn't fault any of those guys. And I would have gone too for the right amount of money.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna edit this out. I don't know why I just said yeah twice. I'm sorry. So you mentioned earlier that you worked with De Niro, and you've worked with Scorsese. If you had the ability to work with any actor, living or dead, share the screen or stage with somebody, is there somebody that comes to mind, like, oh, I'd love to be in a sitcom with this guy, or share a movie with this guy?
I'd like to be in a gun scene with Alec Baldwin. Put me out of my misery. No, I mean, look, I got to meet most of the people I've wanted to meet in life. I've been very lucky, but I mean, who's gonna Pacino? I don't even know. I might even be too nervous to do anything with Pacino. It would have to feel right, and everything would have to look like I belong there for me to say, yeah, I want to do it. Because otherwise, I would just be too nervous and uncomfortable and feel like an imposter. But there's nobody I can think of that I would really want to because I've gotten to meet the people I really like, almost all of them.
I actually, here's a name drop for you. I interviewed Tony Danza
Oh
a
yeah,
few weeks ago, and I know you're a huge fan of Taxi. I think
yeah,
you've said it's your favorite show of all time.
best sitcom ever. Yeah.
Sitcom. Why do you think sitcoms just aren't connecting with audiences? And even I go to the movies an insane amount of times a year, almost over 100 times a year, and there might be 3 or 4 comedies that actually get released in theaters. Why do you think it is that audiences aren't able to see movies that are comedies, and the sitcoms aren't really connecting like they did in the 70s and 80s and 90s?
Because sitcoms now are too afraid of complaints. They're too afraid of losing advertising revenue through a complaint. Like they don't know how to say this is an adult subject and we're handling it in an adult way. I felt like I mean, I think the public itself is responsible because the public itself is the ones who complained. But like things like All in the Family, which really pushed boundaries and took on very hard issues, and the jokes were smart. And the joke of all of them is Archie said all these bigoted things, but he was always wrong, or almost always wrong. So that was the joke, was that this guy really believes this stuff and he's kind of an idiot. They don't allow that to breathe anymore. They feel the necessity for you to know that they know he's an idiot. It's almost like the writers want to put their stink on things, and the All in the Family writers didn't need you to know that they personally felt Archie was an idiot. So nowadays, I feel like they hit it on the nose a little too hard, which makes it unbelievable and hokey. And the laugh track has killed things. But then again, they did that during MASH too, which I always thought sucked. Laugh tracks are just so unnecessary, and they've gotten just things that you would never laugh at, they're laughing at. So I think that's where they also stopped being funny, was you didn't need to be funny to get a laugh because you had a laugh track.
It's always funny if you ever go online, you can watch these sitcoms without the laugh track, and it's just really uncomfortable.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen the show The Wonder Years back in the day, but they would have a narration, and somebody took out all the narration during it, so it's just really like 30-second just awkwardness because the Daniel Stern is narrating, but it's just complete silence, and it's some funny stuff.
That's very funny, yeah.
And speaking of funny stuff, Jim Norton Can't Save You, one of the best podcasts out there. Now, you give advice to callers and you hang out with your comedian friends. Obviously you famously left Sirius. Was that last year, right? Or
At the end of December. They actually stopped the negotiation, but I was fine with it. I was done. I wasn't going to take less money. I didn't like how they did it, but hey, look, I got a good run there. Anything you do for 20 years, you can't complain about. And it wasn't helping my stand-up career at all. So I feel like now I'm kind of doing what I should have done 10 years ago with a podcast and all that stuff. So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I don't know how you did it with your schedule, man, because you're doing the late night comedy,
Yeah.
stand up, and then you got to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to do the morning show. I mean, must have been very, very difficult. But on this show, Jim Norton Can't Save You, you give advice to listeners and you help people out in certain situations. I was wondering if maybe you can help me out
Sure.
with my crippling fear of dying and just hypochondria. I obsess to the point where I'll go on my phone and just search up one disease, and then that will go down a rabbit hole of just, constantly finding something else wrong with me. I'll go to the dermatologist 20 to 25 times a year if I find something on me. It's honestly horrible, but I don't know if you have any advice for somebody that does deal with health anxiety.
Any type of anxiety, it's all from this weird control place. What I would always say to people is like, you have to resist the urge as much as it's painful to resist the urge. And it doesn't feel like the urge is going to go away. It will go away. It's like quitting smoking, right? Just don't keep looking things up, because the funny part is you're going to die. Like like it's guaranteed you will eventually drop dead. So will I. So the idea of obsessing about that and irrationally trying to control things or trying to cut it off and trying to outsmart it, I'm never going to cut it off. I'm never going to outsmart it. So my suggestion would just be, stop fighting the inevitable. Just be common sense. Take care of yourself. Stay healthy. If something's wrong, go to the doctor. But don't obsessively try to catch things 9 miles down the road. Because I would do the same thing, kind of. I go for full body scans, and I'm too claustrophobic for the brain scan. But my doctor goes, look, the odds are they're not going to find anything. And usually they don't do anything until you're showing symptoms anyway. Like, I'm the same way anyway, so I do kind of get it.
Getting to watch you on the 21st is going to bring me so much joy, and it's going to bring, hundreds of people that go to the Paramount in Huntington so much joy. And Jimmy, this has been such an absolute honor. I could talk to you
thanks.
for hours. I have hundreds of questions written, but maybe we could do this some other time. I'm such a big fan of your work. I do have one final question about the Opie and Anthony show. Obviously, that's where I think a lot of people know you from.
Oh, yeah.
I know you don't really go back and listen to too many of your clips, and I'd have to ask this question, though. What do you think the odds of there ever being, I know it's such a hack question, but some sort of reunion of sorts? I know the bridges have been burned and there's been so much hatred spewed and
Yeah.
from every single end. And do you ever see in any setting, maybe if the Saudi government offers you guys money or something, is there any way you guys get together? Because you and Anthony are friends, you do the show on
Yeah.
WABC with him, but is there any chance ever of a reunion?
I don't see it. I would never say never, only because bands who have had more than just argument problems have gotten to back together.
Beach
You know
Boys.
what I mean? Like bands who have had like really horrible things. Those guys are just going at it online, really. And there was
Yeah.
stuff that happened behind the scenes, but I don't see any possibility of it. But I would never say never, only because I've seen other people who I know had worse histories by far get back together. The difference between a band and radio is with radio, you're talking live, you're looking at each other, you're in the moment now. Whereas if you're doing music, you can just play the song or sing the song and not focus on that guy. He's playing guitar, I'm singing. We don't need to really interact. But when you're just talking, it's a different thing. So the energy is a little different. So hey, I don't see it, but if it ever came to be, I'd probably be as shocked as anybody who's listening to this.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for your honesty. You've always been brutally honest with whether it's your books or your radio or your stand-up comedy. And if you want to see Jim Norton, you can head on to the Paramount in Huntington on November 21st. That's Friday the 21st. He'll be performing stand-up comedy at one of the best venues on Long Island. Jimmy, thank you so much. Before you go, do you think you could say this is, Jim Norton, you're listening to the Radio Rumble with Justin Greenberg?
This is Jim Norton, and you're listening to the Radio Rumble with Justin Greenberg. Lucky you.
Thank you, Jimmy. This means so much to me. You have no idea, dude. I listen to you every day. I listen to old O&A clips. I listen to your comedy, and you really are the best. I've interviewed so many people over the years, from musicians and celebrities, and this is a dream come true more than any other person ever. So
Thanks, Justin. Thank
it
you.
really means the world to me, and I can't wait to see you on the 21st, dude.
Very kind. I appreciate it, buddy. Thanks so much for helping me sell tickets. Thanks, pal.
Yeah, thank you, Jimmy. Have a good one, buddy.
All right, Justin, you too. Be good, buddy.